infatuated with each other. You're hanging on every text message. You're daydreaming about your future together as a couple. So you decide to commit to the relationship and all hell breaks loose.
This is the power struggle. You've spent your whole courtship imagining how your partner's going to complete you, and now that you've committed, you want to turn that fantasy into reality. The problem is, we don't get into relationships to complete the other person. We get into relationships to complete ourselves.
That's right, and this power struggle went down with Mike and I, big time. You know, as I said earlier, Mike is a little bit more detached or more aloof, and that was something that attracted to me to him initially, because that was kind of what I was familiar with in my childhood. But once I decided to commit, it really infuriated me, and I wanted him to change and make me feel better. That would heal me somehow. And you know, also I think I can be codependent, and I can be not as good at setting boundaries and doing healthy detachment. So he mirrored for me a part of myself that I had buried inside that was uncomfortable to look at. Another example of this power struggle was around Mike being the spiritual leader in our relationship. I really wanted him to, you know, set the moral code and kind of be this, you know, steady presence. And again, that was something I didn't have in my childhood. And I sees that in him, but he didn't take it to where I wanted him to. And so that, again, angered me and created this power struggle that we had throughout a relationship.
And early on in our relationship, Genevieve had a lot of indecisiveness about us. And that mirrored for me a lot of things that I experienced while growing up, a lot of what I saw in my family, and also a lot of what I saw in myself. And for years before we met, I was trying to get rid of my indecisiveness and be a more decisive person. And so when I saw it in you, it was really frustrating and agitating. Yeah. And then also, Genevieve was a fairly conservative gal when we met, but she had these sparks for sure of adventure and creativity and art. But then she would talk about a suburb that she liked to live in and a more traditional domesticated lifestyle. And it just bent me all out of shape, and we would argue a lot about that and polarize each other around that topic.
Yeah. And the thing about these power struggles is a lot of these are subconscious, you know, kind of old primal drives. And so we're not usually conscious and, you know, really clear about what we need and communicating it in healthy ways. A lot of it comes out passive aggressively through arguments and ultimatums and just unhealthy ways.
Why don't we just ask each other for what we want? It would make a lot more sense if the woman needs more sex in the relationship, or if the man needs more intimacy. That's possible, right?
Sure.
It would make perfect sense for them just to ask for it. Well, Harville Hendrix, the author of Getting the Love You Want, ties it back to our early infancy. And when a baby needs something, they don't smile and coo at their parents. Instead, they wail. And their parents anticipate what they want, and they give it to them. And so when we act this out as adults with hostility and anger and passive aggressiveness, it's kind of this return to infancy. It's adult wailing.
That's right. And, you know, Harville Hendrix breaks down this power struggle into 5 stages, and they're the same stages of grief. And that is, I've got to look here because I can't memorize it, shock, denial, betrayal, bargaining, and despair. And we had all of these stages. They weren't necessarily linear, but for example, one of the stages was bargaining, and my bargain with Mike was if he read the Bible every day with me, then I'd commit. And for him, it was if I chose to live in this one particular neighborhood that was more urban, then he'd commit. So we definitely danced with a lot of these stages.
We did. There was denial for sure. And there was despair towards, you know, the peak of our engagement. There was real despair. And despair is where 50% of couples split. That's our 50% divorce rate in this nation. Harville Hendrix talks about other couples that choose to lead parallel marriages, and that's where they stay in the marriage, but they're not connected, and they look outside the marriage for their fulfillment.
And about only 5%, according to Hendrix, actually choose to walk through the power struggle, get the support that they need, and create a conscious relationship, which is ultimately very rewarding and healing for both partners. And that's what we are going to talk about, and that is what we're talking about. But one of the first steps of really making a conscious relationship is deciding to close your exits. And that's something that we're going to unpack the next video, so stay tuned.